ever since Lamar Jackson got drafted, a lot of people were just kind of clowning and like, oh, not bad for a running back. He's won multiple MVPs and all that. But if you look in this division and you look at the Cleveland Browns, they'd almost prefer to have an actual running back starting at quarterback for them heading into this season. All right, yo, what is going on, guys? It is your boy, the Football Falcon, and we are back with the 5th installment of these videos here, doing the predictions for every team in the NFL. This is actually be the 6th video, actually. We've done the entire NFC, and now we've also done the AFC South. If you guys haven't checked the AFC South one, link is down below in the description if you guys want to check that out. But today we're going to be doing the AFC North, consisting of the Baltimore Ravens, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Cleveland Browns, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Going to be an interesting division. I think all these teams have potential to be at least a decent team this year, other than maybe the Browns, but obviously we got a lot to dig into today, and we're going to start with the Baltimore Ravens, so let's get right into it. Alrighty, guys, we are here on the Baltimore Ravens looking at their offseason, and on paper it may seem like, it's been a little bit of a quiet offseason for this team, but if you guys have been living under a rock, this team tried to trade for Max Crosby, and then the physical failed. Obviously that was a whole big ordeal. They tried to trade 2 first-round picks to acquire Max Crosby, and it fell through, and they pivoted and went the Trey Hendrickson route because he was the cheaper option. Even though they gave him 4 years, under $12 million, $60 million fully guaranteed. In theory, that was their biggest move of the offseason. But other than that, kind of minor additions, I would say. I do like the Jalen Hawkins signing. He was pretty good for New England last year, former Falcon. Chidobe Awuzie was just okay with the Titans, didn't really play much. Calais Campbell comes back here after doing a stint wherever he was. I believe he was in Arizona last year. He's kind of bounced around. And yeah, that was about it. Obviously, looking at this team's roster and what they've done in the draft and stuff, I think they've had some nice moves. Obviously, I like the Awane pick in the first round. Zion Young, Jacoby Lane has apparently been the star of camp. Elijah Surratt, who I liked at Indiana, he was a big jump ball receiver. Matthew Hibner, a bunch of guys, just kind of depth pieces after that. But my biggest concern for this team, and what I think is going to be the biggest concern for this team, is can Lamar just get over that hump, I would say. Obviously, this team has kind of got the roster to be good right now. And, if I didn't say anything about Lamar, I would also say, can this receiver group be consistent? You've only really got one proven guy, maybe 2 with Rashad Bateman on the roster. And then Mark Andrews is obviously, kind of on the downward, I would say, in his part of his career, coming off his worst year statistically of his career last year. But you got Zay Flowers, obviously, you give him the big extension, first-round pick out of Boston College just a few years ago. He's been a bright spot for you. He's been good. Obviously, he's had a couple plays, where he hasn't been, that superstar guy, but he's been consistent, and that's all you can ask for as a receiver. Jacoby Lane, obviously, we just talked about him, the USC product. He's been the star of camp, so hopefully he can translate and make things work out. Rashad Bateman, obviously, it's been okay. Elijah Surratt, it's just a bunch of unproven in there in that receiver room. So can the receiver step up for Lamar this year? And can Lamar get over that hump and get this team to the Super Bowl, which is probably their goal and their expectations, even though they just hired a new head coach in Jesse Minter, who I do really like as a hire. Going to really make this defense look good. I'm excited to see what he can do with these guys. And Kyle Hamilton, Nate Wiggins, Trey Hendrickson, Roquan, Marlon Humphrey. They got a lot of good guys there, so it's going to be fun to see how that goes. But let's get right into predictions here as we head to the Baltimore Ravens. We've already done quite a bit of their games, so for the rest of these, we'll actually probably have done about half of the team's games already, so we'll just go through them one by one. As you can see, week 1, I do have them beating the Indianapolis Colts, even though it's on the road. Week 2, I have them beating the Saints, and then week 3, they go to Brazil and play the Cowboys, and I have them beating the Cowboys and beating the Titans week 4. So starting out 4-0, very strong start. I do have them losing to the Falcons in week 5, dropping their first one. And then they go to Cleveland in week 6, which will be a fun one as well. I do like the Browns in certain cases to upset the Ravens, and I actually am going to take the Browns in this one, kind of in an upset. Todd Monken, obviously being part of the Ravens just a couple years ago, a little bit of a revenge game scheduled here, and the Ravens, for whatever reason, drop one to the Cleveland Browns once every 2 years, and I know people are like, no way they're going to lose to Cleveland, but believe me, trust me, it's possible, and I'm going to have them, lose an upset game here, but, obviously it could go either way. They could destroy the Browns both times this year. I could see it happening, but I'm just going to predict that it's going to be a split this year more than likely. Speaking of splits, you got the Bengals coming off a mini bye. This one's going to be tough, I'll be honest. I think the Ravens do get the better of them on this one. It is at home, which is nice. I know the Bengals are coming off the mini bye, but I just think the Ravens are going to be a little more prepared early in the season to play the Bengals, so I think the Bengals are a team that gets better later in the year. Week 8, they go to Buffalo to play the Bills, and this is another game that's always going to be fun when they play. They played in Week 1, and it was a crazy game. I am going to take the Bills ultimately in this one, though, in a close one. Do think it's going to come down to the wire like they always do. just like the Week 1 game where it seemed like the Ravens had this one in the bag and they blew it to the Bills. So I'll take the Bills in this one. Week 10 or Week 9, I do have them beating the Jaguars in a short week, and then they get the extended week against the Chargers in Week 10. I do have them winning that one, getting back on track, winning 4 in a row actually, or 5 in a row, including after the bye. I do have them beating the Chargers and the Jaguars back-to-back, and then have them going to Carolina, beating the Panthers, and then going to Houston and beating the Texans. Lamar's always given the Texans problems. That's just kind of why I've always predicted that, no matter how good their defense is. And I do have them beating the Buccaneers as well. And then they get the Steelers. They have 4 straight games to finish the year, and they're all division games, and these are going to be tough, I will say. I'm going to take the Steelers in Week 15. I do think these teams ultimately will split, and then I'm going to have the Ravens also splitting with the Browns as well. The Bengals, man, this is a team I'm super high on this year, and I do think the Bengals ultimately will get the best of them in one at least. I do think the Ravens go 3-3 in this division, so it's going to be interesting to see, and then I do have them bouncing back and beating the Steelers in Week 18. Kind of a quick synopsis here, but I do have the Ravens going 12-5. Very high on this team, even though it's a first-year head coach. I think they're going to figure stuff out, man. I think this team's got the recipe to be good. But, man, like I said, I'm really high on this division and the teams that are in it, and we're going to do the Cincinnati Bengals next, who, if you guys haven't been paying attention, I'm very high on this team and what they're going to do. And, yeah, let's go right into the Bengals here in Cincinnati. All right, guys, we're here on the Cincinnati Bengals, and before we even look at their offseason, my biggest concern for this team is going to be Joe Burrow's health. Number 9, can he please stay healthy? Because if he can't stay healthy, I don't know what to think of this team, but the sky's the limit if Joe Burrow can actually stay out there for all 17 games, and obviously, when he played the last time they played all 17 games and he was out there, they didn't make the playoffs, but, man, he had such a good season. But the defense got better, and, man, I'm so high on this team, even though Zach Taylor's the head coach, who I'm not the highest on. The talent's just undeniable, and you can't deny that. But let's look at their offseason. Let's look at their roster, and obviously my biggest concern for this team is Joe Burrow's health. Can he please just stay out there? I know that's, a cliche thing for this team, and obviously the defense is another thing to talk about. I know they're kind of unproven as a group. I think they will be improved from last year. That's not saying much, but yeah, I just want Joe Burrow to stay healthy. But let's take a look here. Obviously, they bring back Joe Flacco, 1 year, $6 million. I do like that because he was pretty good last year when Burrow went down, but if you do got to go back to Joe Flacco, your Super Bowl hopes are probably gone. So I wouldn't be too high on that. Josh Johnson signed a 1 year contract. He's played on every team in the NFL, it feels like, so it's just kind of an okay addition, I guess. They do re-sign Orlando Brown, 2 years, $32 million. Dalton Reisner comes in here to help out the O-line. Nice veteran addition. He was actually solid last year when he signed with this team midseason, so it's good to see him back. Boye Mafe was probably a notable addition coming out of Seattle. Was solid for them as a pass rusher. He signs here 3 years, $60 million. Obviously, the biggest addition they made was trading that number 10 overall pick for Dexter Lawrence, and then again, a 1 year, $28 million contract extension. Obviously, if you can get the Dexter Lawrence from 2-3 years ago, this is going to be a slam dunk move. If you get the Dexter Lawrence from last year, I know people are going to look at the stats and be like, oh, we only had half a sack, but the pressures were still there, and hopefully he can be, motivated to have a good season, because if you can get that version to Dexter Lawrence, the 2 year version 2 years ago, man, that's a dangerous addition. I love that for the Bengals, but only time will tell. They do bring in Jonathan Allen also, who was pretty solid for the Vikings, and obviously, from his Washington days, he was pretty good as well. Jalen Davis, Jasir Taylor, just decent, and then Brian Cook's pretty notable coming from the Chiefs, 3 years, $40 million, so a couple of nice additions. And then if we look at this team, obviously I think their draft was pretty interesting. Cassius Howell was a really fun pick. I did like that. He was probably a first-round value. Getting him at 40, I want to say it was a 41st pick. Pretty good value, honestly. So not bad there. Takario Davis, a lot of people thought he was a little overdrafted. Kind of a zone corner out of Washington. He's like 6'4". Connor Lew does have potential to be a starting center for this team, which I really like. And then Colby Young, decent receiver out of Georgia. Brian Parker could be nice depth on the O-line. And I do like the Jack Andrews addition. Needed another tight end for that 12 personnel stuff. And then looking at this depth chart, man, they are scary good on offense. I mean, my goodness. Obviously, you start with Joe Burrow. Chase Brown, who, in my opinion, is one of the more underrated running backs in the league. He can do it all. He can pass catch. He can pass protect. He can, actually run in between and outside the tackles, which is nice. So, and he's a little smaller guy, but, man, he's a workhorse. He's a dog. I really like Chase Brown. Underrated for sure. You got the best receiver in football, in my opinion, in Jamar Chase. I know there's a lot of guys you can, argue that with, obviously with, Puka Nacua and JSN and, guys like that. But in my opinion, I still think Jamar has the crown. That's just my opinion, though. You guys can agree to disagree on that. T. Higgins, who's obviously a top 20 receiver at worst any given day, and then some days he's a top 10 receiver in the league. So you got two of those guys that are alphas, which is great. Obviously, and then the depth's okay. You know, Andre Yosivas, he's been okay when he's played. Charlie Jones is a good return guy. Mike Gesicki, obviously, he was pretty consistent for this team last year. And then this defense looks solid, too. And I got to tell you, man, I think DJ Turner is the most underrated cornerback in the entire NFL. Was very, very good last year, and he was shut down, man. He was really, really good, and he's going to get a payday coming up very soon. And then, obviously, looking at, you know, safeties, you got Jordan Battle. Brian Cook comes in as well. Jordan Battle was solid, but my biggest concern for the defense is this linebacker group. It's young, and they didn't add anything to it, and they were horrible last year, with that being Barrett Carter and Demetrius Knight. Barrett Carter, I believe, was a 4th-round pick. Demetrius Knight was a 2nd-round pick. So hopefully they can take steps forward. But let's get into the predictions here with the Bengals. We've done quite a bit with them already. Obviously, I do have them losing week 1 and 2 to start 0-2. So, you know, on paper, I'm low on this team to start the season, but I do think they ultimately bounce back after losing to the Buccaneers and Texans to start the year. That's just a tough first 2 games, if I'm being completely honest. But I do have them going to Pittsburgh and winning. Then they get the Jaguars in week 4 at home and win that one. And then they get to go to Miami in week 5, and I'm going to take the Bengals in that one as well. And that'll hit them at the week 6 bye, and this is where their pivotal part of the season starts to hit. You get the early bye, you get a chance to reset, and then this is where I think the Bengals are going to explode and really be that good team. So I do have them losing to the Ravens coming off the bye, but then they get a nice stretch of games that are very winnable. They get the Titans at home in week 8, who obviously, you know, I think are going to be a decent team this year, but the fact that they get them kind of in the middle of the season, they're still trying to figure out Cam Ward in year 2. I do think they win that game. Then they got to go all the way to Spain to play the Falcons. Obviously, the Falcons, they don't even know who their starting quarterback's going to be at this point, and we're at the middle of the season, and, you know, they don't have to go to Atlanta. You know, they get to play a game that's pretty much a neutral site game, which is nice, so I do have them beating the Falcons there. And then week 10, they get the Steelers again. I do think the Steelers have a chance to split, but I do think the Bengals will sweep the Steelers this season. I do think it could be, you know, one of those games that go either way. You know, I think the Bengals should have swept them last year. You know, had some really fun games, so I think it's going to be fun. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers last year, that's going to be a storybook ending for Aaron Rodgers and those guys over there, but I do think the Bengals ultimately get the best of them twice. They go to Washington and beat them on a Monday night, which would be fun. Week 12, they get the Saints. Joe Burrow hosting the Saints, getting a win there, and then they go to the Browns in week 13. I'm going to take the Bengals in that one. I do think the Bengals get the best of Cleveland on the road. And then their toughest game probably of the season, they get the Kansas City Chiefs at home. This is a tough one because I do think the Chiefs are a solid team, but give me the Bengals, man. I think the Bengals usually get the best of the Chiefs in the regular season, and, you know, I think the Chiefs are going to be good this year. Don't get me wrong, you know, but these two teams kind of have a fun rivalry ever since the Burrowhead drama happened, and, you know, obviously Kansas City come back down 21-3, or, no, the Bengals come back 21-3 and won that game. And, yeah, I mean, this is a fun little rivalry that's not really talked about as much now because both teams have kind of had their ups and downs the last couple of years, but, yeah, I'm going to take the Bengals ultimately in that one. Then they go to Carolina and Indy back-to-back weeks and win those 2 games, and I do have them winning those, and then beating the Ravens in Week 17. And then to finish off in Week 18, I do think they're going to sit the starters probably, and I'm going to take the Browns in that one to finish out the season. And I've got the Bengals going 13-4. That is the best record I've had for a team this season. I'm very high on this team. Obviously, this team could absolutely plummet and be an 8-win team or a 6-win team if Joe Burrow doesn't stay healthy, but I'm betting on it that he's going to stay healthy, and this is going to be, and I'm probably not going to have a team better than this. I do think the Bengals are going to be the best team in the AFC this year, as long as Joe Burrow and the rest of the team can stay healthy. It's a big if. It really is. But I think the Bengals can bounce back, you know, to what they were in 2021 and Joe Burrow's second season. So that's what I'm betting on, and that's what I'm going to gamble on. So that's why I do these predictions. You know, I got to throw out some takes in there as well, and that's where I have the Bengals at 13-4. You guys let me know what you think, how many wins you guys think the Bengals get. And, yeah, we're going to head on to the Pittsburgh Steelers and talk about their offseason moves and their roster and my concerns and obviously to their predictions as well. So let's go right into Pittsburgh and get things underway. Alrighty, guys, and here we are with the Pittsburgh Steelers. It is the farewell tour of Aaron Rodgers. In my opinion, one of the better throwers of the football of all time, if not the best. I mean, the amount of plays I've seen him make in his career has been unbelievable. But obviously his legacy, and my opinion on his legacy, is for another day. This is his farewell tour in his last year. He did announce that just a couple weeks ago. This is his last season in the NFL. And a pretty big season because it's the last opportunity he can go get his second Super Bowl with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And obviously he comes back here and re-signs 1 year, $22 million, up to $25 million. Going to be interesting to see how he does this year. I am obviously a big Aaron Rodgers fan and how he plays the quarterback position. So going to be fun to see how he plays this year. Let's take a look at these other additions, though. They bring in Rico Dowdle, coming from the Panthers, who was kind of a breakthrough year 2 guy. or year 2, breakthrough guy last year for the Panthers. He was their RB2, and he was pretty solid. You know, Chuba Hubbard just kind of had a down year, and Rico Dowdle said, I'm going to take this job and run with it, and he was really good. So it's good to see how he does. He earns a contract here with the Steelers. They bring in Travis Homer for probably return duties. Michael Pittman comes here in a trade. Nice little move there. They only give up, you know, a 6th-round pick, and they do give him an additional 3-year, $59 million deal. I'll do like that as well. Aaron Rodgers brings one of his old reliable tight ends over here as well, and Robert Tonyan. They did extend Darnell Washington. Dang, they gave him a 5-year deal. That's kind of crazy. I do like Darnell Washington, though. He's pretty fun. Cam Hayward comes back here, and other than that, not super notable additions other than Jamel Dean and Jaquan Brisker. Do like those as solid additions, and then Asante Samuel, more of a name at this point than what he has been. But my biggest concern for the Steelers team, man, just looking, probably the pass catchers. I do like DK Metcalf, but he got a boatload of money to come here, and he was kind of disappointing. So hopefully he can, you know, up his play here, his 2nd year here in Pittsburgh. Michael Pittman obviously coming over in a trade. I just think he's a solid floor raiser. Probably nothing more than that. Jeremy Bernard was someone I was very high coming out of the draft, so he's a guy I'm really keeping an eye on. If you can get him in fantasy maybe as a late stash or, you know, as a waiver wire pickup later in the year, I think he could be decent. Do like Jeremy Bernard, Ben Skoranek. The rest of these guys are just kind of depth at this point, so that's going to be interesting. But, yeah, Pat Freiermuth, you know what you're getting there. But, yeah, my pass catchers on this team are pretty concerning for me, I would say. I do like, you know, I think Rodgers can elevate these guys, but I just think it's an offense that's going to be more based around what Jaylen Warren and Rico Dowdle can do and those kind of guys, which I think are fine players. They're fine, but I just think their ceiling is just very questionable. So let's get right into the Steelers here and their predictions, where I have these guys going. Just a few games here to do for them, but I do have them starting the season 1-0 and beating the Falcons at home, which is nice. And then week 2, they got to go to New England to take on the Patriots. I am ultimately going to take the Patriots in that one. I do think the Patriots are going to be a fun team this year, and I do have them winning that one. Week 3, they go to, they host the Bengals and are going to lose that one, and then they get a short week against the Browns. I think they will be ready to take on the Browns and win against them in Cleveland on Thursday night. And then they get the Colts on the short bye, and I do have them winning that one in week 5. Week 6, they go to Tampa Bay. I do think that's going to be a tough one for them. I'm going to take the Buccaneers in that one. And then they go to France to play the Saints in week 7. I think they bounce back there, and then also sweep the Browns there in week 8 as they head to the week 9 bye. And they're kind of in a middle of the pack team. You know, they got to go out here and get some wins, so hopefully they can be, you know, a team that's good. But a lot to figure out here after the bye week as they go to Cincinnati. I do have the Bengals winning that one. I do have them upsetting the Eagles, which I think is an interesting game, but I think the Steelers match up well with Jalen Hurts and those guys over there. And then their schedule kind of gets tough here. They host the Broncos on a Friday, so they get a pretty short week, only a 5-day stretch. I am going to take the Broncos in that one, coming over to Pittsburgh. And then they get to host the Texans, who I did take to beat the Texans in that one. Kind of an upset game, I would say. And then they get the Jaguars on Monday night in Jacksonville. I did have the Jags winning that one. And then I do have them beating the Ravens, splitting with them, and then losing to the Panthers, beating the Titans, and then losing to the Ravens to finish things out. I do have the Steelers going 9-8. I mean, it checks out, man. I mean, they're just the most mid team on paper, in my opinion, other than maybe their defensive line and cornerback room. But yeah, I got them at 9-8. Is that going to be good enough to make the playoffs in the AFC? Maybe. I hope so, for their sake. But I do have them at 9-8. I think this checks out for the first year under Mike McCarthy and stuff. But it's going to be interesting, man. Very, very interesting. Don't know how they're going to end up, but it's just kind of where I got them at, as a middle-of-the-pack team, and, you know, nothing more, nothing less in Aaron Rodgers' final year. Hopefully it's good enough to make the playoffs and, you know, at least give Aaron Rodgers one more chance to go win a Super Bowl. But that's where I got the Steelers. We're going to finish things off there in Cleveland with the Browns here in this AFC North, and then we'll do a recap. So let's head to Cleveland and get the Browns taken care of. All right, before I get things started with the Cleveland Browns, I do want to note that I do like what this team did, but my biggest concern for this team is the quarterback room. I mean, it's an absolute train wreck. Obviously, you got Deshaun Watson, who has been an absolute disappointment with this team. You got Shedeur Sanders, who was a former 5th-round pick last year, who showed some flashes, but really wasn't amazing. In my opinion, who's a really overhyped quarterback prospect, you know, and he just hasn't really done anything for the Browns, but he's getting a crazy amount of hype. You got Dylan Gabriel, who has no arm talent, and he hasn't really proven anything as a 3rd-round pick. And that's about it. So that's where I'm at with this team. I think their quarterback room is their biggest concern, but let's go in here to the offseason. Other than that, I like what this team did in the offseason, which is, you know, ironic considering there's teams that have the quarterback and never do anything with the quarterback they have. So it's kind of interesting. They bring in Tylan Wallace for a return guy. They trade for Titus Howard from the Texans. Solid, decent O-line addition there. They get Tevin Jenkins and Zion Johnson and Elton Jenkins. So they bring in 3 offensive linemen and invest quite a bit into that. I mean, that's probably a good $100 million right there. Obviously, the biggest trade they did was trading away Myles Garrett in exchange for Jared Verse, a first-round pick in this coming draft, and a second-round pick, and a third-round pick. So they got a lot for Myles Garrett, but, it just sucks that they're losing the best player on defense, literally, in the entire NFL. And I love Jared Verse, but he's not Myles Garrett. That's not crazy to say. But losing out on a guy like that after breaking the sack record sucks, and that's just crazy to even think about, right? Like, just imagine a team has a receiver that breaks the touchdown record. Like, let's say Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson this year has like 25 touchdown receiving and breaks the record and has like 1,800 yards. They're just like, yeah, let's go trade him away. It's just crazy thought to me, that the Browns would even do that, but I'm not surprised because Cleveland's done some crazy stuff in the past. Anyway, probably not the greatest comparison anyway, but they bring in Kalia Davis, decent depth. I'm pretty sure he was on the Niners. Sam Kamara, Quincy Williams. I do like Quincy Williams, former Jet. He was solid as well, but not a lot of moves other than that, but they did have a big draft. They got Spencer Fano, Casey Concepcion, and Denzel Boston, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. It was very high on those first 4 draft picks, and I like what they did in the draft. So if they're going to be better than what I think they're going to be, it's going to be because of these guys that they drafted and their impact as rookies. But overall, I do think this team has a lot of question marks other than that. And obviously I think their quarterback room is the biggest question mark. I mean, you just look at this, I'm just not impressed. We didn't even mention Taylor Green, but we don't even know what the rest of these guys are going to be like. Quinshon Judkins coming off a pretty big foot injury, so hopefully he can be back to 100%. And if either of these rookies don't step up, and Denzel Boston and Casey Concepcion, this receiver group's a problem. Jerry Jeudy hasn't really been the same since 2 years ago. And that year or 2 years ago was even an outlier for his career. Cedric Tillman, Isaiah Bond are just decent options. I do like Isaiah Bond as a deep threat, but I think my favorite pass catcher on this team right now has obviously got to be Harold Fannin, 4th-round pick, I believe, out of Bowling Green State last year. The sky's the limit for him. He could be a top 5 tight end this year if the quarterbacks can get him the football. But yeah, they invested a lot in the offensive line, so hopefully they can hold whatever quarterback's under center upright. And then looking at the defense, I mean, it's hard to say they didn't, downgrade a little bit, losing out on Myles Garrett. Having Jared Verse is great. That's awesome. But losing out on Myles Garrett's definitely a big loss. And this cornerback room, Denzel Ward, bringing him back is nice. They got some solid pieces, though. I do like, the guys they do have. And Ronnie Hickman, Grant Delpit in the safety room. Tyson Campbell is solid. Miles Harden, I mean, it's all right, I guess, for a nickel. But, I think the cornerback room's decent. And then Carson Schlesinger, I really do like. I'm really excited for him. Obviously, in year 2, the defensive rookie of the year last year. So hopefully he can continue to up his play. They did spend a 5th-round pick on Justin Jefferson out of Alabama. Quincy Williams, solid addition. And then Emmanuel McNeil-Warren in the safety room I do like as well. So I think they're going to be a solid team, but I just don't know. I just don't know for this team, like, the opponents they're going to play and how they're going to fare out. They start out with Jacksonville and Tampa on the road, and I just don't love their odds to beat those teams to start the season. They do get the Panthers at home in Week 3, which I still think is a tough game, and then they get a divisional opponent against the Steelers in Week 4. I mean, that's just a tough start. I mean, in my opinion, I got them at 0-4 to start out. Then they got to go to the Jets. I do think the Browns do beat the Jets. Even though the Jets have a little more talent, I think the Browns on defense got a little bit more going for them than the Jets do right now, so I will take the Browns in that one. And then I do have them upsetting the Ravens in Week 6, losing to the Titans in Week 7, the Steelers in Week 8, and the Saints in Week 9, and the Texans in Week 10. I think the Steelers and Saints games could go either way. I do think the Texans will probably beat them pretty easily as they head into the Week 11 bye. And then as we head into Week 12, they do get the Raiders. I actually am going to take the Browns to beat the Raiders. Do you think that's a game that could really go either way? Obviously, I don't know who's going to be starting for the Raiders at that point between Mendoza and Cousins, but I know the Raiders fully intend to start Cousins, so we'll see how that goes. Week 13, I got them losing to the Bengals, then losing to the Falcons in Week 14, then losing to the Giants and the Ravens and the Colts, and then beating the Bengals to end up the year. So I got the Browns sitting at 4-13. I'm just not high on this team, man. They got to show me something. I know I like what they did in the offseason, but I think if this team can get a franchise quarterback, this team could be a 7-8 win team. If they had, I don't even know, if they had freaking Bo Nix as their starter, I think this team is a 7-8 win team. But they just have such a big lack of talent at quarterback room that it's the most important position, and that's where they got to get better at. So hopefully heading into next year's draft, they're in position to take a guy like a Dante Moore or whoever's, available at that point. But not too high on this Browns team. Let's take a look here at the AFC North. I got the Bengals going 13-4, the Ravens going 12-5. I think both these teams are going to be really good this year, and they're going to be playing for the division towards the end of the season. Got the Steelers at 9-8, and then the Cleveland Browns sitting down there at 4-13. Make sure to, guys, let me know what y'all think. What teams am I too high on, too low on? Obviously, if you haven't seen the rest of them, I'll recap these. Here's the AFC South down here on the bottom. Then we got the NFC here on the right side, NFC South, the NFC East, and then the North, and then the West. So make sure, guys, let me know what you think. Up next, we're going to be doing the AFC West with the Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos, and Raiders. Going to be a fun one to go over. If you guys have any other suggestions for content after we get done with these next two videos, then make sure to let me know, because I'm totally open to do whatever. Probably going to do like a fantasy ranking for any position. Probably going to start with quarterback, probably to start out, and who I'd draft and who I wouldn't draft. But yeah, that's going to be it for today's video, guys. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and make sure to check out the other NFC and AFC breakdowns in the description below. I got a whole playlist for them, so that's going to do it. Hopefully, guys enjoyed. It's your boy, the Football Falcon, and I am out. Peace out, guys.